The right to offend is not some pesky little part of freedom of speech that we have to put up with. It is the heart and soul and lungs of freedom of speech. It is the coursing lifeblood of human progress. It is the instigator of liberty and modernity and science and understanding. What a laughing stock today's student leaders are, that they can so casually dismiss the right to be offensive without realizing that their lovely, enlightened lives are the gift of individuals who gave offense. Offensiveness is not just something we have to begrudgingly accept. Offensiveness is the motor of human progress.
Now broadcasting from the Right to Offend Media Studios in sunny South Florida, bringing you the latest in politics, current events, art, and pop culture. This is the Whitfield Report Live with Sam Whitfield.
But giving offense is good. In fact, it's essential.
Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Monday edition of the Whitfield Report. I'm your host, Sam Whitfield, recording here at Right to Offend Media Studios here in South Florida. And joining me this week on the podcast is Terrence Leyhew, author of One Man's Treasure and also the host of the Suit Up podcast. And Terrence is suited up here to the nines, even though we're recording this on a Friday. But before I get to our guest, quick announcement for those who haven't seen. Night of the Vigilante, my Vigilante Justice thriller, is available for pre-order. That will be coming out on March 25th. So I posted the announcement on Friday. So pre-orders are up now, and so if anyone who has a Kindle e-reader wants to go ahead and pre-order that, they can. Really appreciate it. Pre-orders always help indie authors, and thanks to everyone who has supported all my work and everyone else in the indie author. And with that, Terrence, welcome to the Whitfield Report, my friend. How are you?
I am doing great. Congratulations on the new book coming out too, by the way.
Thank you. Well, and I have to confess too, I'm a big fan of the Suit Up podcast. Like I've actually been listening to it for a while, and it's actually funny because I found you initially like a few years ago on Instagram, and I thought that you were like a men's fashion Instagrammer at first. I thought that the Suit Up podcast was actually like a podcast about suits initially, and then I listened to it and I'm like, oh, cool. This guy's into the same stuff I am. So honored to have you on the show.
Thank you. No, it's great to be here. I think that there was definitely when I first started doing this, the question of would Suit Up become one of those half men's fashion, half random stuff that I enjoyed. And pretty quickly on when we interviewed Charles Ardai, the editor of Hard Case Crime the first time, it became clear that the podcast's destiny, its future, its zenith would be me talking to people that were interested in stories and storytellers. So that's kind of the direction it drifted, but I'm too much of a nostalgic person to delete the initial episodes of the show, which I occasionally delved into a little more fashion stuff.
Hey, I don't mind that as someone who likes to, dress up myself and, wear
Nice jacket,
wear
by the way.
blazers. Thank you. This is a old school Burberry jacket. So, yeah. Anyway, though, speaking of the Suit Up podcast, just tell me a little bit about yourself and just kind of your general background, and then we'll get into how did you get started with podcasting and everything.
So I have a background in organic agriculture, which is not what you think of when you first meet me on the street. But because I did that, I started doing a podcast about agriculture called The Intellectual Agrarian. I did that for over 100 episodes, and it was really fun. It was really enjoyable, but I kind of started wanting to talk about things outside of work-related topics because ag is fun, but that's kind of what I'm around. I want to lean more into literary interests and the other things that interested me, talking about James Bond and Ian Fleming, etc. So that's when I kind of spun off into doing the Suit Up podcast, because I used to do, with the farming one, a discussion with a friend of mine about our favorite books of the year. And so that was kind of the initial idea, the seed, if you will, to then spinning off Suit Up, where it became more about books, more about literature, more about stories and storytellers. My background is organic agriculture. I've been writing since I was a wee little laddie. My Godzilla spec script still has yet to be picked up. I wrote the compelling treatise for Godzilla vs. Monster Zero 2, which is the exact same thing as Godzilla versus Monster Zero 1, just with new aliens. And I think it might have been the crayon and Crayola marker drawing concept art that I did along with the script that Toho did not choose to pick it up. They did not produce it. But ever since then, I've enjoyed writing stories and being interested in the fact that it's Godzilla. I think leans a lot into this is the shards of my personality, where it can range from something very Hemingway, Fitzgerald. And then I really just like watching a guy in a rubber suit beat up another monster figure in another suit while badly dubbed American over top of Japanese actors is happening.
Yeah. Well, there's like that's the whole thing, right? Is like people love to talk about, everything is like CGI now and whatnot, which is true. But there's something like, I don't know, even though it's campy as hell, there's something like really fun about, watching like, as you said, a giant man in a rubber dinosaur suit just, beating the crap out of a cardboard, Tokyo
Building, yeah.
set, or if you've ever watched any of the old Star Trek episodes, watching Captain Kirk like badly, fist fight some like dinosaur mutant on a clear soundstage Mars planet or something like that.
I think that camp is underrated to a certain extent. Like when it can be done well, it's fascinating, it's enjoyable. I just rewatched the Shadow 1994 and think I can't decide if it's being ironically campy or if it has no idea that this is what it is. I think it knows what it is. But when a movie has just that right bubble of self-awareness and not self-awareness, that's when movie magic happens.
Yeah. I mean, there's camp like that's kind of like self-aware and fun, and then there's camp kind of, you're mentioning the 90s, like, then there's like camp like Batman and Robin, which is like, that when most people like criticize camp, that's what they think of it, where it's like, it's so campy, but yeah, it's also like trying too hard to take itself like, too seriously. I mean, part of that is, I think one of the problems with like, to be fair, I think was such like a drastic, shift in tone from like the Tim Burton Batman movies. I think like people weren't like ready for it, but like at the same time, like they could have advertised like a bit better, being like, hey, this is completely different, not like trying to, lead people thinking it was a sequel or something like that. But
I actually will say that I'm an apologist for Arnold Schwarzenegger's Mr. Freeze. That is perhaps, in my opinion, one of the greatest, what I'll just call check roles ever, where he just got a really big fat check to just walk around covered in blue paint and say ice puns. Like, it shouldn't work, but it does.
That's not even my biggest problem with that movie. My biggest problem is the fact that like George Clooney is like trying to do like the whole brooding Bruce Wayne thing, but yet he's also like, he's actually like smiling like psychopathically when talking out, oh, Alfred, my parents got brutally murdered and I still can't sleep at night. And it's like, dude, why are you smiling maniacally while you're
might be one of the biggest miscastings ever.
Yeah.
Like, this is like getting a little bit into a tangent, but I'm a big Batman fan. I grew up watching Batman the Animated Series. And so like Batman Mask the Phantasm is perhaps one of the greatest. I think Batfleck did not get enough credit for the fact that Ben Affleck playing the role, he had that right vibe where he looks, you have to look handsome. So like, yes, George Clooney makes sense on that level, but there's that twist, that turn where in, I think it's Batman v Superman, you see Bruce Wayne like, oh yeah, smiling, ha. And then the moment like he's alone, you see his face just drop and he's brooding Batman, which for Batman the Animated Series, you can just instantly hear the voice tone difference between Kevin Conroy being Bruce Wayne and then Batman. Like that kind of twist and turn is what you really need for a character that's going to have a secret identity, or at least Batman specifically. Like, come on, this is what we need for our Batman.
Yeah. Well, Kevin was just so brilliant in that role. I mean, like, like my parents, talking about like how iconic, Adam West, and, by all means, like he was, but, like I also explained to my mom, like, after Kevin Conroy passed, I'm like, I believe Kevin is also the longest person to like, I mean, I know a lot of his stuff is voice acting, but like, if you want to like,
yeah,
if you want to, I mean, he was Batman for like close to 35 years. I mean, that's, that's like, I think that might be like one of the longest, acted. I'm sure we'll get someone in the comments who was like, well, actually, it's, it's someone from, Transformers or something like that. So. But.
Just wait, Kevin Feige's planning on having Hugh Jackman play Wolverine until the day he dies.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, Marvel has, I mean, look, I can get off on a whole tangent how, Kevin Feige has just turned Marvel into a money train and it's lost its, soul.
Tracks.
But, you also mentioned, that James Bond was a big influence on you. So is that where, like, the idea for Suit Up kind of, like, came about? Or?
Partly, this is, like, very tangential because it doesn't come up very often. I'm a big fan of How I Met Your Mother.
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
and
me too.
Barney Stinson's Suit Up has become, there's a book called Philosophy and How I Met Your Mother. Or I think it was called like How I Met Your Philosophy. It was that series where like the Wiley Company or something did pop culture and philosophy essentially. And I loved an essay in that book about Barney's concept of suit up. And it was the idea that he shows up ready for whatever. And so I started kind of thinking about what's the suit up philosophy. The suit up philosophy is that you are prepared to take advantage of opportunities when they show up. That means sometimes dressing the right part. That means getting the right skills. That means positioning yourself appropriately. And so when I first started with the concept of suit up, that's where it was leaning towards. And it's still there. It's not the main premise of why I call it suit up now. I call it suit up now because that's kind of my tagline at this point. Thank you, Barney Stinson. R.I.P. The How I Met Your Mother universe.
Yeah, and I also love How I Met Your Mother. Although, like, I have to be honest, like, because I always used to wear like suits in, like high school too, and like for a long time, I had never even like heard of How I Met Your Mother. I basically got like kind of like I wouldn't say bullied into it, but kind of like cajoled into it because like people kept being like, "Oh, you remind me of Barney Stinson," and I'm like, "Who the hell is Barney's?" So I finally had to watch like I think they were like in the 7th. They weren't quite at the end, but like it was on Netflix at that point. So I was like, okay, I'll watch this, and it got pretty good up until like the last 2 seasons when they when they lost the plot.
That's the hard part when watching a TV show is, so also I'm a big fan of Suits, like shocker there. But when you get to that final season and a half, there's usually a reason it's the final season and a half. Either the actors are getting big enough, they don't want to keep doing this because they're not getting paid enough. That's what happened with Jason Segel. Is that the right name? The guy who played Marshall. Season 8, he did not want to do. He did not want to do season 9. He had bigger opportunities, but he was in a contract. And so they kept like pulling him in. Also, by then, I see this with Frasier, another show I love. When you've been writing amazing writing, really, when you have a show that lasts long enough, there's an eventual point, and like, you know this from writing too, with characters, you have so many character dynamics and relationships. When you're working with a static cast, eventually, if you're writing them for about 8-9 years, and especially if it hasn't changed that much, you start to run out of concepts. I'm assuming that's the case. That's also why they'll throw in like a random character, like in Frasier, they add Daphne's mother. The moment they add Daphne's mother, they have more relationship dynamics that can bounce off, that creates more plot threads. It's not a great solution. Ideally, they want to delving into the characters, but especially after 9 years, and if you haven't changed the writer's room, it kind of gets stale.
Well, the other problem too, and I've noticed this like especially like in television, because like I haven't written for television, but like I actually when I was in college, I'm a technical writer by trade. So like I do a lot of business, documents in my day life. But when I was working on my major, like I took like a lot of screenwriting and film production courses, because those like counted as electives
Cool.
towards and as it turns out, like that's the type of writing that I actually use the most as like an author. But yeah, like one of the things that I've noticed this with like TV shows too, is like, and books, is right, like you'll start out with like with like material that you have written for like a couple seasons of a show or whatnot, and then often what happens, especially like in like network television, the show becomes like way more successful, and so that initial arc that that you had, so say that you had like material for four solid seasons, and then it becomes so successful that like, well, we didn't have anything planned for beyond, so we need to come up with more material. And
wasn't that
it kind
Lost?
of, yeah, that's what happened with Dexter too.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever seen that show, but
I haven't, but I've heard people refer to it that way. It's also based on book series, if I understand correctly.
yeah, the book series is like is way different from the show too.
Oh, okay.
Like because it's about a vigilante serial killer, and they had, in like, yeah, the show is like way different from like the first 3 books are kind of what the show is based on, and then they took like a different direction, because even Showtime was like, yeah, we can't necessarily get away with like pedophilia related stuff, in the book. So, but yeah, like I think, yeah, like writing for television is just like a completely different animal, and when people run out of ideas, that's like a hard thing.
Have you ever seen the show Castle?
I've seen one episode, so
Okay. There's a basic premise, is that, for those listening at home, is that Rick Castle is a successful mystery author. He's paired with a detective. It's one of those types of shows. But there's an episode where they show up at a daytime soap set because, of course, someone died. And Castle's like, oh yeah, I'm a writer too. And the screenwriter rooms, they're like, we have to write a new episode every week for like now until the end of time. And you publish what, 1 book a year, maybe? And he's like, oh, well, I guess that the dynamics are a little different between TV and novels.
Oh yeah, well that's like the crazy thing, is that like somehow, and like also like I want to know who watches these things too, because like I just saw that like The Young and the Restless is like going on, it's like is going on its like 50th season or something like that, and it's like who's I'm like, who's watching these, and like how are they still getting the money to like like,
when good television is not getting funded because it can't make money, instead we still have daytime soaps.
Yeah, well, we have daytime soaps that have been around since like my parents were kids too. That's like the funny thing. Yeah. Um. So I mean, did you start writing? You mentioned you started writing before doing the podcast, but what was like becoming a published author like something you always wanted to do, or was that like something that you approached later on?
I originally thought that I was going to be a nonfiction writer. I enjoyed essays and things more like Ryan Holiday, Nassim Taleb, philosophers, etc. And I thought I'd write something more in those types of veins. But then, kind of as a lark, because my struggle writing, and I know I'm not the only author, this might be something you struggle with too, depends on your disposition. I am someone who meticulously cannot keep velocity. I start working on a project and then I start getting stuck in it and tinkering with it until the point that's dead.
Yeah.
So I wanted to write something I didn't care about. And so I said, you know what? We're going to write just to write something. I'm going to write a romance novel starring a man that is based on the man's perspective. And it was as successful as you think a premise of a book that way went. But I enjoyed writing it. It was really fun to do. And I realized in the writing that I wanted to write fiction and that fiction was far more than nonfiction, the direction I should and wanted to go.
Uh,
And that's where then the ball started rolling. I think I published Reason and Romance in 20. It was post pandemic, I think. So it might have been 21, 22, somewhere around there.
yeah. I think you and I are around like the same age. I just turned 30 and you're
Going to turn
31.
30 this year.
Oh, okay. Well,
So yeah, we're right there on the same page.
well, I don't. Well, what month are you?
July.
Oh, okay. Well, enjoy your last 11 months of your 20s. So they say everything goes downhill after 30, but I don't know, man. I tend to think that like I'm actually in the prime of my life, so to speak. But yeah, it's funny because like I've been writing like political commentary pieces and doing like blogs for a long time, and like I'd written fiction as like a kid, but I hadn't really like published it or done anything. And then after I graduated, like because of the job market, like post COVID, like no one was really hiring technical writers in tech, so I started to freelance, which is evidently like what I do now. But like also when ChatGPT like came out and like people were using that to like do nonfiction, I was like, well, what if I were to like help put like some of my fiction like bullet points in, because like I'm good at writing, but like organization, I'm one of those people, like I'm a pantser, or like you, I have the same thing of like I'll meticulously like get stuck in the weeds with
You're a technical
something.
writer. That it's kind of part of the job, right?
Yeah. So like, and this is the other thing too that I love is like I've been pretty open about like how I use ChatGPT for like my writing. People like, oh, you just have the bot write it for you, and I'm like, no, you know I like have the bot like help edit stuff, but like that's about it. Like everything I put in there is actually my work, so
Mm-hmm.
it definitely does help to like.
I just started experimenting with it, with doing edits and feedback, because I'm realizing it has a lot of power for me getting hyper specific questions. I started working on a World War One 1920s era story, and the hyper specific questions about airplane models and airmail routes, being able to type it in and get immediate feedback on these are the things, and if it gives me sources, it's even better.
Yeah, well, basically, like what I'll do for mine is like I'll basically like copy and paste like a rough draft of a chapter, and then
Mm-hmm.
I'll be like, okay, because what I do is I write my because because I was kind of like because I'm also kind of like a screenwriter, I guess. So like I'll
Mm-hmm.
write my chapter out like in draft mode as kind of like a present tense
Mm-hmm.
scene, and then I'll be like, so I'll describe what's going on, and I'll say, okay, write this chapter as like a novel, right? And then also like I'm not really like specific. I'm a gun guy to like a little bit of an extent, but like I'm not one of those gun guys like Jack Carr where like I'm lifting. So like I'll be like, okay, what caliber does of gun does like the okay add that in here then. So like I'll have ChatGPT just like fill in like little details like that to like help polish my writing, but that's about it. Yeah, when authors are like, oh, AI is taking over, it's like I don't think you guys really understand. Like, yeah, if people are just like letting ChatGPT like write their material for them, like yeah, that is lazy, but like most of us who actually know how to use it are like we use it as like an editing tool,
as an editing
and
tool.
not
The
like
same way as like Grammarly is AI essentially at this point, right?
yeah.
I mean, I guess
So
I haven't used it. Editing's the thing that I've always not. I like editing in the minutia of how do I make this word better, not the technical elements of grammar. I have
right,
a book by Peter something called The Glamour of Grammar. It's the only one of his books that I have not finished reading. He's written like 4 or 5 of them. I love Murder Your Darlings. It's a great book on writing. And now I feel really bad at not knowing what his name is. Roy Peter Clark. There we go. I knew there was Peter in it.
oh yeah,
Phenomenal writer about the art of writing. But the one book on grammar, I was like, and here's where I check out.
yes. Some of those books can get like a little too academic for me personally. Also, I did like start to like read a few of those like how to write like thriller books or something like early on like in 2016 or so, and it's like you read those and it's like okay there might be some good stuff, but like okay, what books has this person published and how successful are they? I've written more books than they have. Okay, well then like so like
Have you
that's
read
the other
any of
thing too.
Have you read any of Robert McKee's books on writing?
No, I've heard of them, but
He's the one that like I was coming up with like a list earlier because I'd seen someone posted like on their website, these are like the books on writing. I was like, okay, what are my favorite books on writing? Dialogue and Character by Robert McKee. I haven't read the one people think of is Story by Robert McKee. And I haven't read that one. I've read Dialogue and I've read Character. And those 2 books are incredible. Just as he dissects like the best of fiction, and in fact, their book on Dialogue, he takes an episode of Frasier and dismantles parts of it. It's just a really enjoyable, well-written, refreshing book about something that I nerd out way too much about.
yeah. Well, I don't know about you, but like I've been interviewing like authors on my podcast for about like the last 2.5 years, pretty much since I kind of entered the indie author space myself, and like I've learned a lot about writing just from like interviewing other authors. And like I've incorporated that into like my own writing, and like that's been better than like any book I've read on like writing myself. So
Yeah, doing the thing is the thing. No writing wisdom can give you better than you need to write if you want to be a
yeah.
writer.
Well, and then same with like publishing too is like like especially with like how like publishing has changed like so drastically now too.
That's one of the things,
So
mutual guests we've had, Eric P. Bishop. It's always been fun to just pick his brain or hear his story about setting up his own publishing imprint.
yeah.
Going from having had a traditionally published book to then coming up with his own stuff.
Well, okay, so the funny, because like I think I might be other than his son, I might be Eric's biggest fan, and I say that because I've known him for like I've literally known him for 10 years as of this year.
Wow.
We we met initially via like one of the Mitch Rapp like Facebook fan groups before like either him or I were like we were just like fans of like the thriller genre. And then like when he first published the Body Man the first time around, I asked him, I'm like, hey, I've interviewed one or two authors, but would you like to come on my podcast? And he said yeah. And the first time I had him on was phenomenal. And now like I've had him on 4 times. I've been on his show. He had me on at Health to Scribes,
Well, that's cool.
like at the end of last year. He's phenomenal. He's really supportive of of everyone in the genre. And like as far as like the business end of things, like he'll say that like he has a lot to learn and I'm sure he does, but like he's really helped me just with like kind of the ins and outs, like okay, like when is the best time to publish, all that stuff. And it's interesting, especially since like he's been on both sides. So and then like kind of on the flip side, like he's asked me questions on like podcasting since I've been in podcasting for forever at this point.
Yeah, how long have you been podcasting now?
Oh God. Well, I've actually, and I'm sure when I come on Suit Up, we'll talk about this too. But I've been podcasting since
Wow. So you have seen all of the cresting, the rising, the falling, the great 2020 influx.
Yeah, so the funny thing of it is, I've been podcasting since I was 13. I initially wanted to go into talk radio when I was like, I initially wanted to go to broadcasting school. But what happened was, when I was a senior in high school, I went to like a political conference in Colorado, and one of the local radio guys was there. And so at the time, like I introduced myself and so that I was interested in getting into radio. And I actually had, because cloud computing wasn't really a thing even in like it was just kind of starting out, but like I had a USB thumb drive of like a few of my episodes, of like my best episodes, and I handed it to him, and I was like, okay, like, I know that this is a weekend thing, but like if you can listen to that would be cool. Well, he actually, I guess, listened to them that night, because the next day he comes down to me, we're like gathering for breakfast, and says, hey, I actually listened to your stuff, and wow, you would be great for radio. I'm gonna talk to my boss, the station manager, and see what he has to say. So I actually met with one of the station managers of like the local talk station, and he said, listen, we like what you're doing, but the problem is, hey, you're still in high school, you're only 18, so you don't have a broadcasting degree. And I'm like, well, what does that have to do with anything? I'm like, Rush Limbaugh started as like a DJ when he was 16. Like, what are you talking about? So basically, the station manager said, well, listen, Clear Channel, which is now iHeartMedia, like they've bought out like a bunch of radio stations, and so everything is kind of changing. And so like, getting on air talent is like way different than it used to be. And so in kind of like a very polite way, he kind of told me like, sorry, we can't bring you on. And what was funny was, so I moved to Florida, and after my senior high school, and like around 2015, that was really when like podcasting kind of became like more like a standard.
People knew it other than just being a random app on the computer.
Yeah, so when I first started podcasting, like I used to have to explain what a podcast was, right? Where you would like, I would have, well, it would be like, it's kind of like a radio show, but like not really. And like, you download it on, when I started, like people were just like manually listening to iPods still. Like that was how.
Wow. Yeah, the era is bringing back memories.
Yeah. Yeah, remember those things with the little
with
click wheels?
the click wheel. Yeah, I remember
Yeah.
my iPod Nano was cool because it had the camera on the back, and I was
Oh
like,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I remember when that was like a big thing. I well, honestly, like I don't think a lot of like you and I, since we're the same age, like we'll remember this. But like I remember like when the iPhone first came out, like nobody like only business people
Hmm.
had them. Like my dad's work paid for
Yeah.
the iPhone, and it really wasn't until like I think my senior year of high school that like I got my first iPhone, and then like everyone else did because I guess cellular carriers like started to finance them more.
Well, and originally they were AT&T exclusive, I think, if I remember right. And then it was as
Yeah,
more networks were able to carry them that you did start getting more and more proliferation. That's the word.
yeah. Well, and I think I was talking with this about someone the other day. I think that was like the other thing too, is like looking back at podcasting, like initially it was kind of niche, but that was because like it's podcasting wasn't like ever super technical, but it was technical enough that
There were
like
barriers to entry. It took extra steps to create the thing, upload the
well
thing. It wasn't as simple as it is today. You can download an app on your phone if you really want to.
well even just like to listen to podcasts, though, like I
Hmm.
said, you just have to like manually sync your
Hmm.
your iPod or your other
Remember having to plug
MP3
it in?
device. Like most people, me included, we would like I don't know, I would sync like my iPod to my computer like maybe every 3 months or something like that, right? So like for people who had daily podcasts, like yeah, that wasn't gonna
Hmm.
that wasn't gonna happen that much. So like yeah, I think around like the mid 2010s, like kind of around the time that I entered college, that was when things kind of started to shift. And then what was interesting too is like I remember in 2020, I remember like in early 2020, I was interning um somewhere, and I was explaining, yeah, I've had a podcast since like 2008, and I began to explain what a podcast was, and the person who was interviewing me was like, I know what I'm that's okay, like, I know what it, and that was like a real mind shot. That was kind of like the first time I was like, oh, like yeah, even like this guy who's like in his mid 60s knows what a podcast is now, whereas like before I had like had to spend like time explaining what it was to people. So yeah, that's always that's always fascinating, is like just the history of podcasting itself.
Hmm. Well, it's like all media. The distribution model is really the thing that eventually determines how successful it is. That's the way it works. We're seeing it now with streaming. Pretty much every streamer has ads. And that's just because advertising is how things make money when
Right.
it's consumed. Like that's the thing. Like streaming kills network television. Now everyone has a stream platform, and all the stream platforms are realizing they can't make money unless there are ads. Like that's YouTube, like all the things, even podcasts to a certain extent. Like but that only works because now we have the devices, the technology that allow these types of mediums to function, whereas they would have been inconceivable, like again, pre iPhone. Podcasts weren't as
Yeah.
much of a thing.
So I'm curious. So you kind of have like my story from like the dinosaur age. So I forget, when did you start like podcasting with Suit Up? I think that was like 2018 when I first heard of you, but I could be mistaken.
It might be around then. It would have been. I clicked the thing on season 4 this year, which means it's been at least 21 since I started keeping track. The very first episode, it might have been 2018. It's
Yeah.
been long enough that it's fading within the realm of time. I did the farming podcast
Yeah,
since like
yeah.
2016, so.
Yeah, that'll happen too. I'm just always curious to like kind of know, like to kind of see like what have you noticed as like because like I'm always curious to hear like what the what the old school guys like me kind of think, and then like what the newer, and then like what the what like the brand new guys like Nathaniel and
And Luke, yeah.
they're like so like sad because they're like 20 we only got like 20 downloads on this episode. Are we doing okay? And it's like, dude, I remember during the days when like I was excited that I got 5
Yes.
listens back
I
in the
think one of the shocking things is when you just realize what the metrics for podcasts actually are. There are very few that perform super well. But again, it's a Pareto principle, 80-20 rule. I'd say I haven't noticed anything specific in podcasting recently beyond. Actually, I have noticed something. I think that what we are seeing is a bit more of a trend where the podcasts that I know I listen to more are ones that are more formatted around a topic. Like example being film criticism, or there's a podcast where a dude is showing his friend the entire DC animated universe. And that's like one of my favorite ones because it's just very nostalgic, but then it's very focused. Like they watch one episode of this
right.
thing every week. The rewatch podcast, like those concepts, I think are sticking more. And I don't know how much of that is the same idea as just nostalgia in general, but even like Nathaniel and Luke, it's a consistent show with 2 hosts talking about a genre or specific topic, rather than like my show is an interview based show where it's, yes, there is a general topic, but like it's just suit up. Like it is not specific when you search it what it is. So I think that it's fascinating to see that there's a trend where I know at least I'm listening to things that are more specifically targeted around topic and genre rather than just personalities.
Yeah, I mean, there is something to be said though, where like I think for you and I, since we've both been around for like a while now at least, people like, oh, well, these guys might not have like a specific niche, but they've been, but I see they have like 400, in my case, like close to, over like 1,000. So like clearly they must be doing something. So, like that's the other thing too. It kind of like I've had to tell other people is like, because like a lot of my friends, they're like, well, I want to start a podcast, and they think that they think they're going to be the next Joe Rogan like
Yes.
overnight or something, right? And it's like, and it's okay. It's like, okay, well, like Joe Rogan is like basically like the tip of the spear. Like he's like way, he's like the exception to the rule of like the guy who like made kind of like a fortune in podcasting. Same with Adam Carolla. But that's because like they started a long time ago, and also like they both already had like a recognition from television and radio and
Yes.
other mediums too. And it's like,
They were
yeah,
already personalities.
yeah, they were already an established personality. It's like you're not going to get to that level, just from like podcasting. But if you're someone like me, or even like you, who's been at this for a while and, can carve out like a decent, size audience, I think that's always good. And the other thing is, you mentioned like, statistics and whatnot. I find it interesting because what I've noticed is my statistics vary from platform to platform. I mean, YouTube I'm banned on. So
Sorry, anytime I hear like the sentence "I'm banned," it just makes me chuckle because
yeah.
you should wear it as a mark of honor that you have been enough to get banned on YouTube. Really, it's if you haven't been banned on at least one social media platform that you know you're boring.
The funny thing about that too is like, so so people like Nathaniel asked me this. He's like, "What did you get banned for?" I literally have no idea, because what happened was this was like in 2020. Yeah, this was in 2020. Let's see. Oh no, this was in 2023. So my grandfather had passed away in February of 2023. So I took like a 2-week hiatus, from like podcasting or doing anything,
Mm-hmm.
I came back and did a live stream, and I was kind of like, hey, here's why I was gone. I was in the middle of giving like literally a eulogy on air to my grandfather, and that was when I got canned from YouTube. And I was also like I was like live streaming on Rumble too, so like people were like, "Hey, your feed on YouTube just went down," and I got then I got the email like, your channel has been terminated. I looked to see like what the reasoning was,
Yeah.
and literally they just said your channel has been terminated for community guideline violations. But they didn't list what it was. They just said community guideline violation. So I've emailed them like a couple times and like, okay, can you always like tell me what I was banned for? Well,
Mm-hmm.
thank you and then I get the automated, well, thank you for, please read our terms of service. And it's like, okay, that doesn't help me. Like,
That's
I'd
not the
like to
answer.
know. And then like my co-host was like, yeah, they probably don't even know what they banned you for. They just probably like gave a blanket, so my point being is like I can't really count YouTube metrics, but like what I've noticed with my podcast at least is like, and this is kind of how like I measure metrics now, is like I post the video to Twitter and I post, the podcast to Spotify, and then it goes out to like all the other,
Mm-hmm.
so like what I do now is I kind of like count up like the total,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I guess views or listens for like all platforms, and like so I probably get like about 1,000 or 2,000 per episode. So like that's kind of how you have to do it now, is like rather than
Mm-hmm.
just looking at like one
Yeah.
metric, you have to look at like all of them.
Mm-hmm.
So
Because really, it is kind of, and this is one of the things I like about podcasting to a certain extent. It's a decentralized platform. Whereas
yeah,
YouTube, while yes, it's great, the audience that's there is subscribed on the YouTube thing. It is, you can create on it, but it's YouTube's. Whereas most podcasts, there are enough different players and feeds that if one, like, for whatever reason, at one point I had Spotify glitch,
yeah,
and then it was able to, I eventually got the feed link fixed, but people would still be able to listen on like 5 different other platforms. You guys remember
yeah,
Google
yeah.
Podcasts? That was a thing.
Yeah, which funny enough, like yeah, they got rid of Google Podcasts and then like they put into YouTube Podcasts, and I told everyone, I'm like, well, if you're subscribed on Google Podcasts, which no one really was, I'm like, if you're subscribed, go and subscribe on Spotify, because like because YouTube has already said they don't want the show on YouTube, and so like it's it's not my fault, so
Mm-hmm.
go and like subscribe to like one of these other 5 places too. So yeah, I mean, and the other thing with YouTube too is like even if I weren't banned on there, it's such a grind.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have like such a grind. You have to like constantly be like posting content every day, sometimes multiple times a day, and it's like, yeah, if you want to make that like your full time, like I guess, but like if you're someone like you or I, or like even Nathaniel or Luke, where you have like other stuff to do, it's like, yeah, you're not going to be able to ever like make it big on
Yeah, I think that I'm just a lazy creative. I don't want to make content. I barely summon the will to post stuff on Instagram. I just want to sit and write and then have interesting conversations. Quite frankly, that's the reason I still podcast, because I've debated
yeah,
every now and again. Because, like, a podcast takes a lot of work and effort to like put things together, create the graphics, scheduling things, reading the books. But I really enjoy having fun and interesting conversations. So that's why I keep doing the podcast. It's been so much fun to connect with people such as yourself over the years and just build like a roster of fun conversations.
oh yeah. Well, and then like yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because like I think to like to anyone like from the outside looking in, like I have a lot of friends who are like, well, Sam, podcasting can't be that hard. You just sit down and talk to people, and it's like, yeah, okay, that's the fun part, and like that's what you see. But like honestly, the hardest thing for me even now is like it's not even so much doing the graphics because like well, I've already done that, and like I kind of like a group of friends that like we all kind of collaborate on that stuff. But like honestly, the thing for me is like posting on Instagram, like the promotion and getting out there is like the heart is like and like I'm not saying it's hard like as in like hard labor, but it's like, you have to post like 2 or 3 times a day and like, just like repetitively too. So
Yeah.
it's just that grind.
Everything is a grind, and it's like Sisyphus. We all have our rock to push uphill, so why don't we choose the rock we want to be pushing?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so we've kind of talked about podcasting a bunch, and I'm sure it will kind of, I don't really have a format for this show. We just kind of talk about various things, but as far as like one man's treasure, like how did you come up with the concept for that handsome book there?
I really like adventure fiction. I grew up reading Jules Verne, and one of the scenes that has always stuck with me as a kid was at the beginning of Journey to the Center of the Earth, where they find the map. And that's always just kind of stuck with me. And I thought about what would happen if two brothers win a treasure map in a poker game. How would that kind of evolve? And so from that little premise, we started spinning out the different characters. So what we end up with is in One Man's Treasure, high profile, high rolling lawyer wins this map and high stakes poker game. And his brother, who is more working class in his tastes and preferences, is like, well, what if it's real? Wouldn't that be the biggest gamble? And then they go off on the adventure. And along the way, they meet spurned lovers and real life modern pirates. And of course, the question becomes, will they actually find the treasure? Will they find true love? You need to read it to find out.
So it's very much like modern day pulp, which I
Yes.
love. And like also one thing I love about like you specifically is like you're the only other guy I know who like actually knows like about like hard case crime. Like you're the authority on it. Like a lot of other websites, they're like, I don't know, hard case crime is just like a brand out there. Like, I don't even know much about it myself, other than that like it's they're kind of like the ones who do like dime store novels now, I guess. So
Hard Case Crime is publishing in print. I've had the editor and co-founder Charles Ardai on the show twice now. Amazing guy, fascinating. He also was a background in tech. He did something with Jeff Bezos like way back in the day. Just one of those random stories of someone that did other things and has a fascinating past. But Hard Case Crime, I love that they do the beautiful art covers. And so when
yeah,
I wrote One Man's Treasure, I was like, I have a general idea of the scene. When I wrote the scene, I knew this was the cover. And I contacted an artist, we got it rendered. The font type, though, I will 100% say when I was talking with designer about putting the actual cover design, I was like, what does Hard Case Crime do for their fonts? Because font you can do anything with. And I realized they use generally a fairly understated font and let the cover be the thing. So that's kind of what I did then with One Man's Treasure. What I find very funny is the exact same font for my name, Terrence Leyhew, is the exact same font that Terrence McCulley's novella has for his byline. And so I was going to have him on the show, and I was like, wait, Chicago 63. And I had like the two books next to each other. I'm like, wait a minute. Apparently the name Terrence just looks really good in Arial Narrow or whatever it is.
So that's the other funny thing too, is like I've had Terrence McCauley on the show as well. I actually have like he I don't have on my desk here, but he actually like signed my copy of Chicago 63
That's
as
so
well.
cool.
Yeah, that was super cool. And so like when I saw that you two were doing like a pod, I'm like no way, it's the meeting of the Terrences. So and then like I was disappointed because like I only found out afterwards after he came on my show. I found out afterwards that he's a big cigar guy, and I'm like man, I wish we had like I wish I had known that beforehand, because we could have had like a whole conversation about that. So, but yeah, like his crime fiction is like really, really good. As
I
our
think his writing hack is one of my favorite ones that I've heard, which is he said that he'll light a cigar and he'll write as long as he has a cigar. And that way it just gives him it eases him into the writing process because and it can be anything. For me it would be like a nice latte. It sets you in the mood to then do the thing, because sometimes getting through that inertia, what's his name, Cal Newport has a book on deep work, and one of his concepts is part of what makes it hard in today's society to do deep work is that you're constantly starting, stopping. And it's that inertia of getting into it and then getting out of it that becomes a problem.
I've kind of noticed the same thing. Like I'm kind of the same way with like listening to jazz music or something.
Mm-hmm.
And when I can smoke, like I do that with writing. But the thing is like I don't have good venting in the house to do that either.
Yeah.
So like if it's not humid out here, what I'll do is I'll go like outside and smoke on the porch and like type something.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I wish I had my own place because then I would definitely like, then I would like smoke and, but anyway, yeah, I mean, and Terrence's westerns are so good too. Like his westerns are so good that like he's one of the reasons why I am tempted like to write like an old style western, just because like I feel like he's set the bar so high that like it's kind of daunting to like think of like following him up almost. So
Anything historical fiction I try to kind of sideways around. That's part of what I liked writing about One Man's Treasure, is that it's set in the modern day. It doesn't
yeah,
require research for me to know what's happening now. Whereas anytime you look into the past, it becomes, I get mired into the details of, well, what kind of shirts did they wear? And random
right.
stuff like that, that really only matters for like one line. But like we had David Darling on the show at one point. He wrote the Egyptian Enigma, and he did a lot of research for the ancient Egypt stuff. And he's like, it could spend an afternoon coming up with information so he knows writing one line. And I'm like, and that's what I'm trying to avoid doing.
Yeah, well, it's
More
like
power to him and anyone that does that, but I
yeah,
try
well,
to
it's like
avoid that in my
even
own
writing like even like writing stuff that is like set in like the 80s. Like I'm working on a prequel series right now for Shadows of Deception that like takes place in the kind of like in the 1980s Cold War era. Even though the 80s is like more recent relative to like things, it's still 40 years ago. The internet wasn't a thing at all. I mean, like even just like searching things like who was in Reagan's, cabinet, like just minutia like that. It's like, yeah, the 80s wasn't like that long ago, neither was the 90s, but still like, you have to like research some of this stuff too. Like maybe you can get away with like some stuff like saying, okay, yeah, this computer was like in like secret development, and maybe that's how you get around like bringing some modern tech in. But like yeah, maybe it's like you really kind of to stretch things to do that type of stuff. And then it's like, yeah, for like writing stuff that's like in that's like from the 30s, like yeah, forget about that for right now. So yeah. Well, and then you're also writing, I don't know how much we can discuss it, but you also mentioned that you're writing a detective story too. So
Yes, so I wrote a detective story a month ago ish. I hit submit to Starlight Pulp. My rule of thumb is I try to write two short stories a year and submit them to Starlight. And then if they don't take them, then I just put them in a pile, and eventually we'll do the Assorted Short Story Collection by Terrence Leyhew.
so you're basically doing what I did with Blood Ties, which is to just submit like each short story, and then the ones that like none of them got picked up, so I put them all in like a compendium, and
Mm-hmm.
so
So we'll see. I enjoyed writing the short fiction detective story. I prefer novella length. So writing short stories are always just a little challenging, and it gives me a good do something different, clear the
yeah.
palette, a nice little exercise from time to time, depending on what I'm doing. And specifically in that case, I just wanted to write something for fun. And then I spent a little more time than I should have on it, but I still enjoyed writing it.
Yeah, so what is it about the novella format? Because like that's kind of the format that I write in exclusively mostly.
Mm-hmm.
What is it about the novella format for you that you like?
I don't like long books. I prefer short books. I like
Yeah.
stories that I can read, digest, and enjoy. I think The Great Gatsby is like perfect in length. And so, really, anytime I'm writing, I kind of hit that within my goal. I don't have the stamina to be interested in writing a book for over 10,000 words, over 100,000 words. I think Reason and Romance clocks in at 5, somewhere around there. And then from there, I try to hover around the 50,000 words just because
Yeah.
it gives me a time to write a story, dash it out. It doesn't take too long. It's not too big. And I can just enjoy writing something quick. Most of the hard case crime books behind me, very few of them are over 200 pages. In fact, I think the only huge ones that they have are probably the ones that I've avoided reading.
Yeah, well, a lot of that, like the hard case crime books too, like a lot of the short stories, a lot of those I know were like published in like either like the
Mm-hmm.
old pulp magazines or like, Playboy used to have like, men's
Mm-hmm.
fiction too. That was actually where James Bond was first
Yes.
like published.
I was
So
going to say, James Bond has a long relationship with Playboy in terms of the publishing of the stories, but then also Raymond Benson, he was one of the continuation authors for James Bond.
yeah,
He had two short stories that he wrote, both of which were in Playboy, which was really cool for like the history of it, etc. Back in the late 80s. So a bit
yeah,
about the Pierce Brosnan era. And
yeah. I
again, just it's
actually
really neat.
yeah so funny thing is I actually collect Playboy. No one believes that I actually
You
read the
collect it for the articles
articles. Well, I mean, and other things
and
too,
other
but
things. Yeah.
no. What's funny is like I've actually interviewed Karina Harney, who was Playmate of the Year for '92.
Oh,
And
cool.
she's actually a fan of my books. So like
That's so cool.
it's cool because like I've actually had like a few of these ladies like buy my books and then like promote them, and it's like I've had like other Playboy fans being like, if the magazine were still in print, like we would tell you to like submit it, and I'm like, yeah, I know, but it's not in print anymore, and so I guess Starlight Pulp was like that's either that or hard case. Like that's
Hmm.
kind of the closest thing that we'll get to like a fiction
Yeah,
thing. So
I think that's been one of the interesting things of reading a biography on F. Scott Fitzgerald right now. He was a prolific author of short stories, and that's where he made most of his money, was publishing for like the Saturday Evening Post. He just
yeah,
had that up until like the last, I don't know, 2 decades. You could make a really decent living writing short stories.
yeah,
I don't know of too many people now that do that, just because again the mediums by which those were published and purchased and consumed have, I won't say vanished, just drastically reduced.
I mean, it's that, but then it's also like it's so hard too because like it's like yeah, there's the internet, but like it's like, like I know a lot of people are like, oh, well, I don't like, I'll read news online, but like I don't want to read, like I actually want to hold like a physical like cop. And like I get that. I understand that, but it's like, okay, well, like there aren't really any like, too many like actual physical pulp, like magazines. And the ones that are out there are like they're very niche and they don't have like a great, distribution thing. And like,
if you get a chance, a great one to look up, and they're publishing like old stories from Men's Adventure magazines, but the Men's Adventure
right.
Quarterly, Bob Dice, Bill
Yeah,
Cunningham, just phenomenal production value and really fun stories. In fact, I'm hopefully going to have an article coming out with one of their upcoming issues. So keep an eye out for that.
Oh yeah. Well, send me when that happens, send me a link and I'll definitely like promote that for you. Yeah, I mean, I also like I know that Substack was gaining like momentum for a while, and like I know that it I know that you can gain momentum, on Substack, but like the other issue is that some platforms like Twitter and Facebook like also like they tend to like hide
Yeah.
Substat link, and so it's like, yeah, it's hard to like, get people to like to view your thing unless you like, send the link to them directly. And it's like, yeah, it's hard when like you can't properly like distribute everything.
I hate
I don't
building
know,
my
like,
email list already. I don't want to combine that with trying to write. It's like a nightmare in my worst dreams.
yeah, well, and then like the other thing with like newsletters too is like, I don't know you, but I'm the type where like I get so many newsletters that I don't read, where it's like, okay, well, if I'm not going to read a newsletter, then like what am I doing
Yeah.
like trying to make, someone else like, read? I mean, and like I know that like kind of for marketing we kind of have to, but it's like, I don't send too many like newsletters
Yeah.
out per year just because like I know that like, like I just sent one out like earlier today for like, to announce my new book, but like that's going to be it for like the next, 3 months or something like that. So, I just kind of feel like, if I'm not gonna, invest like a lot of time reading other people's newsletters, then why would I expect others to, I guess, to read
Yeah.
mine? Yeah. Well, and then I mean, it's interesting what you said about like how you don't like long form fiction either, because I'm in the same boat. I don't know, like I know that Game of Thrones was like a big thing, but like I tried to read it and like I honestly couldn't get I like couldn't get past like the first hour like listening in the audiobook, because it's like, okay, I get that like you're wandering through a forest, but it's like you can only like go. I understand like some people like to be descriptive, but it's like, okay, I know like what a forest, what a snowy forest looks like, right? I
You don't
don't
need to
need to
describe
know
each
like,
snowflake.
yeah, I don't need to know like every single detail. And then the other thing is like after college, like I had to write like papers that were like 100 pages, so like that were like 100,000 words. So I was kind of like, when I began writing it for myself, I was kind of like, yeah, I hate word counts, and so like I'm just gonna kind of like write, to like when I think this, to when I kind of feel like, the story has like a, beginning, middle, and an end, and then that'll be it.
Because ultimately that's your prerogative as an author. And I think it's one of the fun parts about being an indie author is you really get to have that control over the production where you can
Yeah.
make what you want to instead of, to a certain extent what you want to. The market still demands what the market demands, but it's different than being told it must be this length, this many pages, and etc.
I don't know about you, but like, so when I interviewed Terrence McCauley last year, one of the things that he told me, and I understand he was trying to be helpful, and I think probably from his perspective he was, but he did kind of cautioned me. He said, you know, like short stories and novellas don't sell as well as,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like long form novels. And I feel like, yeah, that might have been the case for a while, but like I certainly feel like just based on kind of like the activity in the men's adventure fiction, you know, Discord, like that is kind of starting to change. Like, I'll tell you one of the things for me too is like one of the other reasons why I write novellas primarily was because when I was writing my first novella, Shadows of Deception, and I like told some of my friends who were in college, they were like, well, like Sam, you know, I'm happy for you that you're writing a book, but I'm probably not gonna buy it. And I'm like, well, what do you, or no, I'll buy it, but I probably won't read it. And I'm like, well, okay, what do you mean? And they're like, well, I just, I, you know, I work a lot and then I have to come home and, I've got to spend time with the wife. And so like, I don't have time to like read like a long book,
Mm-hmm.
like they were thinking I was going to do like a Tom Clancy thing. And I'm like, oh no, no. What if, I'm like, well, what if the book were only like 200 pages long or like 150? And
Mm-hmm.
my friend's like, those books exist? And I'm like, yeah. So like, would you read it then? And they were like, oh, well, if it's something I could just read in one weekend and not have to like, keep up with, then yeah, absolutely. So that was like my other prerogative was like just market research. I think people they don't have time to like read long
Mm-hmm.
books anymore. So I don't know if you've encountered that too or
It depends. I definitely know a lot of people that simply don't read, and that's always
yeah.
unfortunate. But then also, they'll read like maybe 3 books, 4 books a year, and I do consider it like a privilege when I'm one of the books. I have a friend that's currently reading it, and it's always weird when it's like someone that I actually know that's choosing to read what I write instead of just a random person on the internet or what. I think it's less common now, but it used to be, oh, my internet friends are the ones reading the material.
Yeah, yeah. Well, also, I think the other thing too is like internet friends are actually like my friends too.
Yes, exactly.
That's the
It's
other interesting
changed where
thing.
that there isn't an asterisk that often anymore between one versus the other. Because if you think about a lot of our interactions now are internet based.
Yeah, well, especially like after COVID too, where like we were
Mm-hmm.
stuck in, like a lot of us were stuck inside for so long, to where like literally all of our friends were internet friends to one extent or the other. And I think in regards to like people not reading books so much anymore, like I don't know you, but I feel like one of the reasons why people don't read as much anymore is kind of what I was talking about, where like
Mm-hmm.
they don't want to invest in like a super long book.
Yeah.
But I feel like since there's been like more of a resurgence in like short fiction and novellas, I feel like more people are starting to realize, oh, I don't have to commit like a ton of time to like read
Mm-hmm.
this book, and so I'm hoping that that changes or
Well,
continues to change.
touching on the James Bond of it all, I think that that's one of the reasons I like Fleming and it stands the test of time is they aren't long books. They're
No,
fairly
they're
brief,
not.
most of them, and that's one of the things I like about Raymond Benson as an author is he did a good job not writing long James Bond continuation novels. Same thing with Anthony Horowitz, who did the most recent James Bond continuation novels that were based on that were set back in the 50s and 60s. Those
Yeah,
ones, again, he did a good job keeping them tight and around the 200 page mark.
yeah, his books are interesting because like his last one, I don't know if you read with a
Yes.
mind to kill, like I can't tell like if he's setting up for like another the way that book ends, it kind of seems
Mm-hmm.
like he's like retiring Bond like as a character. So like
Mm-hmm.
that's the other interesting thing is like what age Bond is,
Mm-hmm.
depending on like, which book you read too. So um
I
yeah.
like the more open ended way that With a Mind to Kill ends, but I'm aware that
Yeah.
the ending doesn't necessarily work for everyone. I just find it fascinating because Anthony Horowitz is arguably a better writer than Ian Fleming. So it's always fascinating to see him write as like I think he's the best technical, like as a writer, he's better than
Right.
Fleming, but he's elevating the Fleming material to a certain degree.
Yeah, and I also liked the ending of it too. I just think it's really interesting how like, wow, is this the end of like Fleming's book? It's really open ended.
I think he handles the question. He gives a more compelling end than The Man with the Golden Gun, which is partly unfair because The Man with the Golden Gun was not, Fleming didn't get finished it, all those reasons. But I enjoy it more than Golden Gun.
I feel like he certainly gave more of a compelling ending than No Time to Die. So, which
I still will argue it's the best last movie for a James Bond actor.
I would
With the exception of like On Her Majesty's Secret Service, I don't think counts because Lazenby was supposed to come back. Like that's the exception. The rest of them, their final movie, No Time to Die is better.
Yeah, no.
Other than License to Kill 2, I think that's a similar situation. License to Kill is a better movie.
Yeah, License to Kill. The funny thing about that was like, basically, so like Dalton was supposed to come back for a third, and then because the actual Cold War ended, they didn't know what to do. So that was why things.
Not
got
only
posed.
that, the rights got stuck at the time. So kind
yeah.
of similar to where Amazon's sitting with it right now. There was another company that had like bought United Artists and MGM, and it was kind of sitting in a limbo where everything that they owned was kind of on the shelf.
What's your whole take on that thing with the whole MGM and Amazon versus?
It's hard because on the one hand, I want the Broccoli's to be able to still have final cut on making the Bond movies. I think that the difficulty is 100% Amazon will probably screw up if they get to make a Bond movie. So I don't want that. I would like more Bond, but I want good Bond. So if that means waiting longer, and if it means the Broccoli's are basically waiting out Amazon to the point where they'll let it go, then I'm okay. But, turning 30, I'm realizing there's only so many James Bond movies that I'm going to get to watch in my lifetime.
Yeah, well, and I mean, I don't want to get political either, but I mean, everything kind of is political these days, so what the hell? But like, if the rumors are true, I do kind of like the fact that the Broccoli's are pushing back against the woke, like kind of like modern audience. I mean,
James
I
Bond
know
is too much of a figure of a very specific age and era. To the core audience itself is the one that you alienate by trying to appeal to quote unquote modern audiences.
It's not even that for me. It's like the quote unquote modern audience they're trying to appeal to. For the most part, they're not the ones who watched it.
No.
Who like watch James Bond either. Yeah, I understand that like, okay, yeah, there might be some like, gay or lesbian, James Bond. Like anyone who comes into the franchise, like I don't care who you are, as long as you understand what it is. Like that's fine. What I don't like, and what I think a lot of like Star Wars fans and other people have the issue with is like people wanting to change the
mythology, the story,
the entire mythology of something, or just to appeal to like this new niche audience that really at the end of the day isn't going to like, they're not fans of the thing. They just want to, appropriate, your IP because they can't write one of their own that's good at all. So
that's the thing, is I'd always rather simply see more good stories and if it has characters like that appeal to modern audiences, go ahead. Just don't take the existing property, make something new. And I think it should be more of a challenge to like, let's try making more good art. But unfortunately, that's not the way that Hollywood as a general system works.
No, I mean, that was actually one of my motivations for writing Shadows of Deception 2 is I'm like, okay, there's not going to be any James Bond for a while, right? Rather than me complaining like how, oh, MGM is trying to wokeify Bond, it's like, okay, well, if they're trying to do that, I'm just going to go ahead and like, kind of like bring my own American James Bond story to life. And like, I wrote Shadows of Deception, like, not even that. The funny thing is, like, I didn't really have any like grand plan to like, make like it a big thing. It was like I had this novella kind of like sitting in my brain for like 10 years. So I finally put it on paper, and people actually liked it. So I was like, oh, okay, I guess I'll go ahead and write the sequel then. So, and it's become like it's become a whole thing. So I'm
And that's the
happy
fun
with
of making
it.
stuff.
Yeah, and even if like no one had purchased it, like, okay, I might not be as enthusiastic to like keep pumping out novellas every 6 to 8 months, but like still, it's I would have had fun putting it out. So, and as it turned out, like I've actually made a pretty good side income off of it too,
That's
actually.
awesome.
So and yeah, and I mean, I hope your book sales continue to go well too. And also, like I said, I do love your bookshelf behind you.
Thank you. I'm very pleased. The organization of most of the books is definitely intentional, not haphazard at all, but some of them gets there.
Yeah, I mean you've got a nice studio setup. Honestly, I'm flattered too that even though it's Friday, you are wearing a suit. I don't know if you did that just for me or if that's kind of like your default.
To a certain extent, wearing for work, but also, you got to represent the brand.
Well, I'll be sure. I do have a couple nice blazers, so I'll be sure to wear that to suit up. So, but this is kind of like my Friday casual wear look too. So, well, anything else you want to promote here? Where can people find you and
I'm across the interwebs. TerrenceLeyhew.com is where everything's linked, but you can find Suit Up with Terrence Leyhew on all major podcast feed. And of course, One Man's Treasure is available on the great and mighty Amazon. And by that, I think where many books are sold online. Search One Man's Treasure, Terrence Leyhew, all that fun stuff.
yeah, and I mean I would imagine your other books are on there too.
Yes, if you want to discover what romance looks like from my perspective, you don't have to come to my home. You can watch. You can read Reason and Romance or Prose Procrastination, and actually for this week up until Valentine's Day, Prose and Procrastination, my sequel to Reason and Romance, is available for 40% off on Kindle. So I think it's $3. This is the thing that really isn't conveyed with the cover. The fun of Prose and Procrastination is the plot is that an adventure novelist falls in love with his editor, and that just creates some interesting dynamics.
So what you're telling me is it's basically autobiographical.
There are elements to which I think that my wife in hindsight goes, this makes more sense now.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, because like I don't know if it was you, but someone said that your wife was also into writing or something like that, or was that someone else?
It might be someone else. My wife does like writing and dabbling in poetry specifically.
Oh, okay. So, that's cool. At least she's not like my ex, where it's like I don't understand why you write so much. So, and it's
It
like,
definitely helps.
yeah. Well, anyway, Terrence, I really appreciate you coming on, folks. We'll link to all of Terrence's stuff. As I said, long time fan of Suit Up. So honored to finally have you on here, and feel free to come back anytime, sir. You're always welcome. And new episode. When do new episodes of Suit Up generally post, or do you not have a schedule?
Suit Up comes out every 2 weeks ish, and on Sunday morning, so you can get your Suit Up Sunday fix.
Awesome. So yeah, check that out on all platforms. It's a terrific podcast, and you've had some awesome guests, and you may be seeing me on there in the near future. So anyway, folks, thank you for tuning in to the Monday edition of the Whitfield Report. We'll be back for the Wednesday night live show, and until then, take care and God bless. Thanks, everyone.
The right to offend is not some pesky little part of freedom of speech that we have to put up with. It is the heart and soul and lungs of freedom of speech. It is the coursing lifeblood of human progress. It is the instigator of liberty and modernity and science and understanding. What a laughing stock today's student leaders are, that they can so casually dismiss the right to be offensive without realizing that their lovely, enlightened lives are the gift of individuals who gave offense. Offensiveness is not just something we have to begrudgingly accept. Offensiveness is the motor of human progress.
Thank you for watching the Whitfield Report live on the Right to Offend Media Network. Make sure to check out Sam's books on Amazon, Audible, and Kindle. You can follow Sam on X at SamW_NGC and the Right to Offend Media Network at RTO Media. Like, comment, subscribe, and share with your friends. And until next time, God bless, God save this great nation. God, freedom, legacy, in that order.